Rich. Want to get started?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Give people another minute or so just to
get
here.
Let's see if anybody's wandering up. Oh, and you can do, it doesn't matter for us. I had a different view on my laptop, but do you want to?
No, if I get to, he showed me that.
Okay.
Two screens at the same time is going to, of the same things might throw me, it's going to throw me off.
Well, I think the recording's starting, so why don't we get going?
Go for it.
All right, well, the clock's saying 2:31, so we should probably get started since I know these sessions are all being recorded. I am wearing an entirely different hat than I was yesterday doing the Mac presentation. I'm not really going to talk that long because I want to let Gary take up the majority of the time and show off all the great work that he's done for Carolina Law over the last couple of years. I just wanted to give a little lead-in information. Gary got hired at the law school about, a month or 2 months before I did, so he started in late 2006. And then I came on board the first week in January of 2007. And I was coming from the School of Education across campus where I'd been the IT director. And we were in a disparate environment. We had a lot of Macs, a lot of Windows machines. But our development stack was basically, MAMP, not really LAMP, because we had a Mac OS X server, Apache, MySQL, PHP. So pretty standard sort of open source environment. When I got to the law school, during the interview process, of course, I knew that they had just hired a developer, and I had gotten to meet Gary. I didn't really process it too much, but at the website at that time had been developed as an ASP site, and part of the reason they were hiring Gary was so that the assistant dean for IT, which was the position I was interviewing for, wouldn't have to maintain and manage the website, which was kind of a relief to me because it's not my first calling to develop web stuff, although I do enjoy it. I'm not a coder really. And so, but what I learned then after I got on board was that, Gary's background was purely in ASP.NET environment and IIS and all that good stuff. And I was like, oh, geez, what are we going to do here? I'm the new IT director, and my lead and only developer is coming from a completely different background than I am. And I had gotten kind of fond of the LAMP environment. But I thought, well, I've sort of got two choices here. I either piss off my guy from day one, my new guy who just started here, and send him off to learn PHP. Not that I didn't think he could do it, but throw him a complete curveball and say, let's redevelop the whole website from the ground up using a different environment, or we find some sort of happy compromise. So interestingly enough, we said, I thought, this is silly. He's a really talented .NET programmer. They wouldn't have hired him if he wasn't, and that was what the code base was already sort of in that environment. So let's just go for it. But rather than pay out a bunch of money for Microsoft SQL licenses, we stuck with MySQL. And there are good ASP.NET connectors for MySQL, and we've been doing that ever since. So as the description, I think, of this session talked about, we have Windows Server, IIS, ASP.NET, and
MySQL.
MySQL is our operating or our development environment. And one of the things that we have really tried to do in the last couple of years, especially in light of all this talk of centralizing services and leveraging central ITS as much as possible, how is local IT adding value to the core mission of the law school? One of the things we've really tried to focus on is business intelligence applications and just processes that have been kludgy and difficult in the past for departments such as career services or admissions. We've tried to leverage Gary's skill set to build applications in-house that rely on our local infrastructure, that can call out to the local LDAP system on campus or whatever other systems we need to, and really bring added value. And so today what Gary's going to talk about are some of the projects that he's been instrumental in creating over the last couple of years and that have been really well received and have helped our reputation on the one hand, but also help the people that we work with get their jobs done. So over to you.
Okay. Let me make sure this thing's on. I guess it's on. Okay. So let me get a sense first of who I'm actually talking to so I'm not talking incorrectly or speaking to the wrong audience. How many developers do we have in the room? And everybody else who's here, what technical type knowledge do you have? Just shout it out real quick just to give me some idea.
Like, what's your main focus?
What do you do?
I do a lot of restaurant programming.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm just going to get started, and this is not by any means supposed to be a overly technical presentation. This is just more of a high-level type stuff. I am trying not to bore you to death and show you a whole bunch of code. I'm not going to show you any code whatsoever, unless you really want to see it, but I don't think you do. So what I'm going to do is kind of give you a quick overview, expand a little bit on what Doug said as far as what we use as far as our development type environment. And then I'm going to take probably at least the last half hour or so to kind of give you a live demo of a couple of the applications that we've built in the last few years that our students and faculty and staff use to do the things they need to do and to make their lives easier. So, to get started. There we go. Okay, so the title, let me go back to the title. So, I'm a big sports person. I intentionally, not completely intentionally, chose the color of my shirt today because we are from the UNC School of Law, so I'm trying to match everything. So I'm a big sports person. The first basketball game I saw was NC State winning the national championship in 1983, and I became infatuated with NC State until I saw the light and realized that I was crazy. And so I have learned since then. But anyways, so there's our title, Score, winning points and adding value through application development that matters. And so first we have to stretch out a little bit. And so this is the approach that we took at the School of Law, which, as Doug said, we were using Windows, IIS, MySQL, and ASP.NET. I have been doing .NET programming since 2002, which is when version 1.0 came out. When I got to the law school, having been doing SQL Server for a while, and Doug said, let's do MySQL. And at that point, I was more concerned with making sure that I could still program than the actual database environment behind the scenes. And MySQL has worked perfectly fine for what we need to do. It's been a little challenging at some times to get everything working correctly as far as the actual database server itself, but for the most part, everything is fine. And what we have here are basically some custom-built websites using open source tools and some purchase modules. What the heck does that mean? That means I write a lot of code. And what that also means, though, is that I don't write absolutely everything. The open source tools meaning if I can go out on the web and find some type of module to do an LDAP connection, for example, then I go out and download it. And some of those we have to pay for a couple $100 that we can use multiple times, then so be it, such as something to convert HTML into a PDF. We use that quite frequently. Or to create dynamic graphs based on data that we have in our database, those kinds of things. Those are the kinds of things we purchased one-time payments over the course of the last 4 years, and we use them for whatever we need to use them for. And so there's the benefits. So the benefits, of course, of having your own custom-built websites is if somebody says, can you do this for me? Most of the time the answer is yes, I can. So anything, almost, is possible. And so, again, most customizations can be made fairly quickly and easily. I had a staff member actually email me yesterday and wanted to know if we could take our schedule that we kind of create in a grid-type format that lists all the rooms and the times at which courses are offered that we just show all of our courses on, and she wanted to know, it shows all of our courses for 1Ls, 2Ls, and 3Ls. Can you do the same thing for me and make it into just 1Ls? And all I had to do to make that happen was to modify one stored procedure, copy a report over, and make a slight tweak on it, and it was done. And I had it done in the span of about 15 minutes. So easy way to do it without having to go and ask somebody who's built something for you to make a modification and have to wait a week for them to get back to you. And I should stop for a second and say that if anybody has any questions at any point, just stop me. I don't necessarily, sometimes I can go a little fast when I'm doing these kinds of things. So now we stretched out. Let's do a couple more warm-ups. What we have in the School of Law are, this sounds intimidating, 11 different websites running on 2 identical load-balanced servers. Well, yeah, I'd say that just to basically sound like we do a whole lot of, basically to make my job sound more busy than it really is. Some sites get more traffic than others. Probably about half of those sites, 5 or 6 of them, are getting traffic on an everyday basis. Some of those are more utilitarian sites, like a site to do remote desktop without having to have the connector installed on your particular computer, for example. What we also have on one of those 2 servers is I have a Windows service that is, of course, written in .NET that basically does maintenance type things. For example, it sends out our email that we send out every day to all of our faculty, staff, and students. It just goes out there, grabs the web page, sucks it down, and emails it out based on the people who we have in our database who are currently here. It also does things such as monitor MySQL and go out there and look to see if there's some process that's been kind of hanging around open for longer than it should be, and closes it down just to make sure that the MySQL server doesn't get too much stuff going on that doesn't need to be. And how everything is tied together, it's all tied together through our internal website, which is My Carolina Law. And by tied together, I mean that every single thing on every single site can be edited via the web. I don't ever have to go in, unless something completely crazy happens, and touch the database directly. If somebody needs to have a value added for a particular drop-down list, I go into My Carolina Law, I go to the appropriate page, I make the appropriate update to the database through the website. So everything all happens through that.
So it's custom-grown CMS.
Exactly.
We have distributed authoring and workflow that Gary has written so that we don't have, Gary's not the web monkey in that old sense of the word where people are calling him up and saying, can you edit my site? And the same thing when he's adding functionality.
Right.
It's all.
Right. Okay. So now let's go inside the game a little bit. There's My Carolina Law. It's a portal for all our faculty, staff, and students, written from the ground up. Individuals log in using their UNC ID, which is called an onion, which stands for the only name you'll ever need. I did not create the acronym, nor did I create the little funny little onion guy who is on the UNC Onion webpage. If you go, well, maybe we'll show that in a little bit. And their password. And so then the little minor technical thing is we go in and check against the campus LDAP server to make sure that their password matches their onion. And then we also make sure that they are somebody who is supposed to be here. We don't necessarily depend on LDAP to differentiate between law-related people and somebody else because of people who can exist in different departments, people who graduated, left university, those kinds of fun things. We keep a record of everybody who is supposed to be here right now in our own MySQL database, and if they are supposed to be here, then they go to our customized homepage, which is the homepage of My Carolina Law. So our scorecard, or the funny thing that I like to say, I know who you are. So all My Carolina Law users have a record in a person database table. Everybody has a role, at least one. Actually, everybody has more than one role. So we have multiple parts of the site, different single pages, little mini applications that are part of the site, can be accessed based on that person's role, and then there's other stuff that kind of factors into it.
And you're going to see all that in a few minutes here.
Yep. So what I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes is the 2 little applications, 2 of the several applications that we have written that have benefited mainly our students, but also our faculty and staff over the last couple of years. And the first one I'm going to be talking about is our joint journal competition. It was actually originally created on the previous iteration of our internal site before it was on My Carolina Law, but this was the first real significant application that we put onto My Carolina Law, which was in the summer of 2008. And this allows for our journals to basically figure out who they want to have on their staffs for the upcoming year. Most of the students who are competing in this are Rising 2Ls. There are some Rising 3Ls as well. They go in at a particular time, usually right before exams. They register to say, yes, I'm going to participate in this, and then they submit their preferences for their individual journals. We have 5 journals at the school, and they can say that they want to be on one journal, anywhere from all 1 to 5 of them. They rank them in a particular order, and then they're given some time to monkey with their preferences if they want to. Once exams are typically over, this is in the spring, the students then are given a huge 250 pages or so packet that they can download to create a writing submission for. They upload that submission to My Carolina Law, and then the journals over the course of the next month to 6 weeks or so go and figure out who go and download all of the writing submissions from the students. It's anonymous. And then they offline, this is something they wanted to keep offline, determine who will be a member of which particular journal. And I will show kind of the various pieces of that in just a minute. And the bigger of the two applications, this is new as of last year, is our Judicial Clerkship Application Program. They wanted a fun acronym that you could pronounce with it. So we call it JCAP. And we did this last year in the summer of 2010. And this is more involved in that what had previously been done with the judicial clerkships was some kind of complicated process where students had to go and walk into the Career Services office and say, I want to participate in this. And they then had to select their judges that they wanted to apply to. They created their own Excel spreadsheets. They were put into the file systems on our servers, and faculty had to go and write letters, and there were all kinds of various issues involved where a student would say, okay, these are the 25 judges I want to apply for. Faculty would write a blanket letter for all 25 and sign off on it and give it back to our Career Services office. Well, then the student would come back after the fact and say, well, I don't want this judge, I want this other judge instead. And there was no sign-off. The faculty member never knew that the student had changed their mind. So what this allows us to do is for every step of every process along the way to be completely monitored, and no sneakiness. You know how these students are. Nothing can happen without the faculty member's ultimate approval. So the students go in, they pick their they go and talk to the faculty member and say, will you recommend me for these particular judges? Faculty say yes or no. They'll go and pick anywhere between 2 and 5 faculty who they want to be their recommenders. They enter their recommenders in themselves, and then go and pick the judges for whom they want to apply for clerkships. And what we do for that is we have a paid subscription to leadership directories that we get once a quarter in a really big Excel file that we then upload into My Carolina Law, and then a student can go and search for their particular judges. And if for some reason the judge is not in that feed, if it's somebody local, then the Career Services office can just add that judge for them. And our staff in our Career Services office then get the letters, usually via email in a Word document, that a recommender writes for a particular student. They upload that into My Carolina Law as well, and then the faculty will go and check and make sure that the letter looks like they're expecting it to look like, and then review the judge selections and approve the letters once everything's done.
Can I just pause a minute and ask, how many folks in the room are even familiar with that leadership directories volume? Okay. Yeah, if we had some law librarians, I would think maybe some more hands would go up. But yeah, so this was a critical piece in the development of this project, was talking through what's our canonical source of information. You know, we have a lot in our own My Carolina Law internal MySQL database, but we certainly didn't have access to any of the judge information, addresses, names, proper titles, about which they're very particular, and you know, the formatting of the letters has to be just so. So we really had to pause on this during the development process, and we came to find that our law library had a hard copy subscription to this leadership directory, and what did they call it? The yellow book, I think, or it wasn't the blue book.
I think yellow's right.
The yellow book, and it would come. Was it once a year when it was in hardbound edition? I can't recall.
I don't remember, but I think at one point they may have let that subscription expire.
Yeah. In any case, we came to find that was sort of the source of information for judges. And in talking to the company, or we had our liaison at the Career Services office, found out through the company that they did offer electronic subscriptions, and that we could basically get this quarterly feed in the form of just a CSV file, really, and that we could then pull that into our database to have all that up-to-date information so that if a judge changed districts or whatever might happen, that their information would be as current as possible. Because keeping the data integrity intact was of real concern to our career services office, and that wasn't something that we wanted to take on with a duplicate copy of it in our database or anything like that. So that was a real key piece that I just wanted to pause on, and just wondered if anybody was familiar with that service. But
and what was happening in a lot of cases, a student would go and pull up a hard copy, version. Here are my judges. I'm going to pick all of these judges who are appellate court judges in the state of wherever, South Carolina, and they would just start blanketing them, and then they would get back a return call or response and say, "Oh, this person's retired," or "they died," or those kinds of things. And this at least allows us to keep mostly, hopefully, accurate information on the judges anyway. Does anybody have any other? There we go. Questions? Sure.
Simplicity. I mean,
but as far as like as a data, it hasn't really come up that for anybody to need it. I guess that I'm aware of.
Yeah, we haven't had to overcome that, or haven't had that hurdle, so to speak. But I know that simplicity ties into this whole thing because some of the judges are only using simplicity, and so the JCAP program that Gary developed works in tandem with simplicity. So they still use simplicity, and you'll see that in this demonstration. They actually have to say when they're going into.
Oscar.
I'm sorry, Oscar. I'm sorry, Oscar is something separate. Getting my two external systems mixed up. Simplicity is for jobs, and Oscar's for clerkships. I'm sorry. But there's a tab in there that says, is this judge listed in Oscar? And so then we go from there. But yeah, with simplicity and employer information or firm information, we haven't had to really deal with that.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions before I go and start demoing stuff? Okay, cool. So let me, there we go. Wait a minute, that's mine. I don't want that one. I don't want to log into our live site because that might go, something crazy might happen here. We'll log back over here. Okay, so this is actually our development site, which is sitting on my2.law.unc.edu. It has exactly the same data for the most part as our regular site. I just copy individual data over whenever I need to. So if I blow something up on here, it really doesn't matter. But this is what students would see when they go to our website. And there's our onion. Oh, let me show the little onion guy. I might as well show the onion guy. While we've got a second, just for the fun of it. Assuming he's still there. There's our onion.
Come out here and sit.
So, not my graphic, not my acronym, but hey.
And it really isn't the only name you'll ever need, because if you work in finance, then you need a separate password, and if you work in IT, you need this password. So it's a misnomer.
So I have one question. Does UNC have a fine arts department, or?
They obviously need one.
Evidently, they didn't talk to ITS when that came up, or ITS didn't talk to them. So I'm going to log in, and this is the home page itself, as far as the actual content of the page, is completely customizable. This is myself customizing it here. And we've got some various different things that you can do when you're customizing it, basically picking your own individual widgets that are there. And I've got some stuff turned off, of course.
The required items were at the request of our Student Services Department and CSO. You see the little boxes that have the anchors mean you can't move them or get rid of them. Anything with the crosshairs means you can drag it and drop it wherever you like, or as Gary just showed, you can just eliminate it. But today's events and today's announcements were critical, and we wanted them to remain anchored in that top left corner.
Right. And then the menus at the top are actually completely dependent upon who you actually are. Now, I'm logged in. I can see absolutely everything. So most people are not going to see the fact that we've got, I don't even know how many things are under there, all of that stuff underneath there. But what I'm going to do is kind of start with the joint journal competition piece of it and kind of go through what the students who are actually applying the Rising 2 LC, and then what the individual staff and journal editors would actually see. And if you want to see something else, or if something isn't clear, just stop me anytime, and then we'll just go from there. So our joint journal competition is under student life and joint journal competition. And then there's a page right there. The student who runs joint journal competition can put up their own instructions. And then there's some dates. Now, I fiddled with these dates here just for demonstration purposes. They don't really have over a year to register for the joint journal competition. But this year's is already passed, so I needed to do that. So if I want to register for the joint journal competition, I click on the link that says, and register for it. Okay, I'm done. I'll register. Nothing else to do. And then I can say I don't want to do it anymore. Okay, now I'm not doing it anymore, and I can register again, and I can do this all day long. But let's go on to something more interesting. So we ask the students to update their summer contact information. And please do not call me at home. But there it is. It says something fairly straightforward.
Again, and if they update something here, it's feeding back into our canonical database, so everything stays current.
Right. And let's see, I can download the JGC packets, which there are all of these little individual pieces. And how these get here is that the student who runs the JJC, who is one of the editors on our law review, goes out and accumulates all of these individual 30, however many PDFs, and uploads them in a separate spot. And then anybody who is registered for the JJC, then when they come to this page, will see all of these. If I hadn't registered first and I'd come to this page first, I wouldn't see any of them. So I can download the complete packet, which I won't because it's over 250 pages, and print it, kill a whole bunch of trees, and then I can go out there and read through all of the various articles and compile my 15-page writing submission, which once the deadline actually comes up at 5 minutes beforehand, I will actually upload it. And I'll go to that. Well, I can do that first. So if I upload my writing submission, I haven't uploaded it yet, I can go out and browse for it, find my PDF that I want to upload, and then just click on upload the file. And the students can upload it and replace it however many times they want to, and they do, up until the deadline for the competition. And crazy me is a masochist, and I want to know every time anybody uploads a file to the web server in case they're doing anything they shouldn't be. So I typically get a couple of hundred emails right before the deadline for the JGC from all the students who are uploading. So I can submit my preferences. I said I had to do that, and so there they are. I'm pretending to be a 2L right now. So they're all around my journals, and I can go and rank them. If I try to rank the same one twice, then it's going to tell me that I've done that, so that's not good. And let's say I'm being silly, and I want to do it this way and not have a second one, then I'll upload it, and it'll push it up to the second spot. And once the preference deadline once the actual writing submission deadline passes, I can't change the journals that I have ranked, but I can change the order that I want them to be ranked. And that's basically to prevent students from completely changing their mind after the fact, and then journal editors will read a submission for a student who is no longer interested, or vice versa. A student will say, I want to be on this journal after all, and then the journals will never actually read their submission because they don't know anything about it. So that's the student. That's it for the student piece of it. What happens after the journals make their decisions is they will contact the journal editors, contact the students individually via email or however they want to. I think they try to do it via phone, which is why they had them update both their phone number and their email address just to tell them that they've been selected for that particular journal. How are we doing on time? Okay.
Gary, can you even, for my own benefit, I forget what you told me, do the journal editors, when they're sort of scoring the package, you said something about them doing that offline, but did they open up the writing samples on MCL and read them?
I'm going to go that in a second. I'll do
Sorry.
That. Any questions on the participant piece of the whole process? Seem fairly straightforward? Okay. So now what I'll do is I'm going to pretend to be a journal editor, and I'm going to go to, get way in here. There we go. So this is kind of the piece that, well, back up a step. The journal editor is not going to see all of this stuff. I see it all, and the person who actually runs the joint journal competition sees most of it, and then our registrar, for example, sees part of it as well. And they put together all the pieces to kind of make the whole thing work. So I'm not going to hit all of these kind of things, but here are the various joint journal competitions that we've had over the course of time, and like I said at the outset, I don't have to go into the database and stick these dates in if somebody wants to make a change. You just go into this particular page, updates your information, and you're done. So there's all the information that has to happen as far as dates and times, instructions. That's fairly straightforward. The packet, this is where the particular student goes in, and you can, if you look at enough of these pages, you can kind of see most of them look fairly similar. It's just collecting different pieces of information. There's all the pieces of the packet. So they can go in and change that there. We can see all of the participants at this particular point. There they all are. Our registrar would go in and enter the class rank and GPA of all the students once they actually get it, because our law review uses both of those pieces of information to come up with their score for the individual students. That hasn't been done yet for this year, so you're not seeing anything top secret. And then the writing submissions. So this is kind of the page. Oh, okay, it's not going to work because it's not over yet. So I'm going to have to fudge that for a second. Let me make the writing submissions done. There we go. Okay.
You're sure you're on the development server, right?
Yep, I'm on the development server. Okay. So now writing submissions are over. I am the editor for the law review. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to see that these are my participants. No identifying information other than a participant number, which the participants actually do have, their year, how they ranked law review, which is going to be first in almost all the cases, and all that kind of stuff. And what we've given the journals the option to do is to figure out amongst themselves how they want to handle their scoring, whether it's the editor goes and prints out the individual writing submissions, hands them off to the editors, gets the scores back and enters them himself, or if they want to divvy it up and let the individual editors on the journal enter their own scores for the participants they've been assigned. However they want to handle it is completely up to them. So I can download their individual submissions, and then there's a checkbox down there for them to download it. They can put their send their scores out to Excel. If they want to enter their score, I can just go in here and put my score in of whatever the numerical value is, depending on the journal. There's the score that I just put in, and all that kind of fun stuff. So they also will then go in and make their offers for their individual students in here as well. And what this allows them to do is to essentially make sure that no student gets offered more than one journal. Now they can make all of these decisions offline, argue amongst themselves on on how they want to do it, but then ultimately they do need to come back in here and put the score offers in just to make sure that nothing's gotten missed in the whole process. So I can go in for this particular person, say I want to make them a regular offer or an alternate offer depending on if I've filled up my quota already. I can update my offers, send it to Excel, all that kind of fun stuff. And then, I have no idea who that person is. We're going to find out in a second, though. If there are any conflicts, it can show that this person's been offered by more than one journal. That would show, and if I click on it right now, there should not be any. There are no conflicts, so that's good. And then I can see the contact information for participants with offers for the law review, and then this lets them go in and email or call Patricia here to say that you've been offered for law review. Do you wish to accept? And I can create a PDF out of there to basically, if I wanted to print it off and post it on the journal door that says these are the people who are your new law review members for the next year, just to, or email it out or whatever they want to do. And then I can see who hasn't been offered, gotten an offer, all of those people, so that our student services people can then send out your email that says, we're sorry, you've not won your iPad. Yeah, see if it was awake. And then the spreadsheet, basically, at that point, I'm not going to print that one off, but what it does is it generates an Excel file that shows everything that the individual participants have put in, their their class rank and GPA, and then the journals that they've preferenced, and then the scores that the journals have given to them, so that it can be used by the journal editors when they're actually making their decisions to kind of get everything all in one fell swoop without having to be dependent on being tied online. So that's that. How are we doing on time? We're doing fine. Any questions on anything? Is everybody awake? Just checking. Okay. So the other part that I wanted to demonstrate was, let me go back to the home page. Oh, I know why it logged me off. It switched back to my tab.
Oh, yeah,
I know
yeah.
why it did that.
That'll
work. I know why it did that. Okay, it switched back to the regular server. Okay. So the more involved part is our Judicial Clerkship Application Process, JCAP, and we put this, there's a couple of pieces to that. There's the part that the students need to do, and then there's the part that the faculty need to do. So under my Career Services menu, I've got this thing for Judicial Clerkships, and I'm a student. Similar type thing to the JJC. I've got my basic instructions. There's the dates, and there's some tasks. So I'm going to register for this, and I haven't registered, so now I have. I'm all done. I'm not going to withdraw from it because once I've withdrawn, I can't go back and re-register again. That's just what they wanted to do for this particular part of it. Okay, I'm going to select my faculty that I've already talked to previously offline. There's no email or anything that goes out when I pick somebody here. And part of that is so that if I go in and I want to say, okay, Doug over there, who is not an outside recommender, there he is. I made him a faculty member for this. An email does not go out at that point in case I decide, oh, I really don't want Doug. I want to pick somebody else, so we don't. The student doesn't change his mind a half a dozen times and generate a whole bunch of emails that aren't needed.
The understanding through our Career Services office was that these students should be checking with faculty ahead of time, that they didn't want to automate that piece of the process. So this was by design.
So I'm going to have Big Bird as my other recommender. He's an outside recommender. He's a judge. There we go. But he's not one of my law faculty. So we have Big Bird here. Here's my other recommender, just for fun. And now I'm going to pick my judges. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So I don't have any judges right now, so I'm now going to add one. And I don't have any. I can't actually type anybody's name in here. I've got to go pick them. So I'm going to choose a judge, and I'm going to get this basic search box that pops up. And I'm not going to, if I search for all the judges, I'd get the however many we've got on here, a whole bunch. So I'm going to search for all of the judges who are in, let's just...
Wisconsin.
Let's do, okay, fine. Let's see all the judges who are in Wisconsin that we've got entered here. And we've got only 49. That's not too bad. So there they all are, and these are the judges that have been loaded on the last load we got from Leadership Directories, which was at the end of March. And if I click on the magnifying glass next to, oh, this is interesting. Brian Blanchard here is listed twice for, mainly probably because the organization is listed 2 different times. That kind of sometimes happens if, I guess, if somebody's like doing has multiple appointments. That's a little odd that one's that way. But let's look at Ann Bradley here, who's on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and I can see more information about her. Address, phone number, all that kind of stuff, in case I needed to call her in advance just to make sure that that it was okay, or for whatever reason I needed to. So we'll pick Ann Bradley here. And now this You Select a Judge button pops up. And now I'm accepting online applications for Oscar. And one of the things that the students did tell us that they didn't necessarily like is that they had to pick all their judges one at a time. And the reason for that is because of the whole Oscar-type process, to where judges may pop on to Oscar at various points during the game, and there wasn't a good way for us to tie the data we had from leadership directories into the information that Oscar has. So the students are supposed to check on Oscar before they actually pick their judges here to see what the answer is to this question. So I'm just going to say yes for this case. Finish. I'm going to add one more, just for fun. So let's say I want to search for appellate judges of some sort. Then we've got 422 nationwide. And let's pick somebody from New York just for the fun of it. And there's too many. My screen resolution isn't that good, but I can still get it there. And I'm going to say Rolando here is not an Oscar judge. So there we go. And so I can keep doing this. And what the students do have is a limit of, is it 25 judges or is it 50? I think it's 50 judges. It's 50. 50 judges that they can select. If they are given permission to do more than that, then that can be controlled by our Career Services Office. If they select more than 50, if they try to select more than 50 here, they're going to be told, you're done, you hit your limit, you can't select anymore. I got 20 minutes. So I can check my application progress if I'm a student, and I can say, okay, there are my 2 judges, and checkbox. The legend at the top is pretty self-explanatory, and Big Bird and Doug have not done anything with my judges yet. Nothing's happened yet. And, okay, once, kind of way after the fact, I can come back in and say, once I've interviewed with these particular judges, I can go in and enter some comments that say, you know, how the interview went, when I actually did my clerkship, if it ended up not being the same year or the year after that I actually went through the process. I can put some comments in for our Career Services Office.
This actually became pretty useful. We had talked to the Director of Students, or the Dean of Student Services, and he said that they used to do it in a binder. Students would type comments, because it's very helpful to students coming in their wake the following years that, oh gosh, be on the lookout, you know, when you interview with Judge so-and-so, he really wants you to look him in the eyes. I mean, very specific types of information about, you know, interviewing for one particular judge or another, or it's, you know, he really warms up if you might mention bass fishing. I mean, that's the kind of thing they were putting into these binders, and students would have to go down to the Career Services Office, look through these binders to try to get some helpful hints, interview tips. And, you know, by putting it online as part of the application process that Gary built, it was really well received. It was just one other way of sort of streamlining the process.
So then a student can come in here, this is a different page, and go and look to see all of the judges. Let's say I want to find all the judges, people who were hired, or whatever parameters I wanted to do, and I can search. There's 131 comments that have been people who were hired, and then I can go and look at the comments that they had. There aren't any comments, that's no good. Let me do a different search then. There we go, comments entered, that's what I wanted. How many do we really have? Okay, we have 85 comments, that's better. So I can go in, and if somebody's interviewing here with Lanier Anderson, then they can go in and look and see, okay, what do I need to look out for when I'm actually going to interview? Just kind of a prep type work. Okay. So I'm going to switch browsers here, and the reason for that is now Doug, the faculty member, that's smaller. Oh well.
It's fine out here.
Oh well. Okay. So Doug, the faculty member, is logged in here, and he's a faculty recommender for me, and I don't see him, and I think the reason for that is that the students aren't done actually.
You know what? When you clicked on faculty recommenders, it was on my.law, not my2.
Okay.
I don't know how that happened.
Did you log into my or my2?
I might have logged into my by accident when we got kicked out of that browser session.
Okay, there we go.
You got it?
Got
Okay.
it. We're good. Okay. So there we go. So now Doug's a recommender. There's a student. And he can see all of the judges for that I entered. So I'm going to actually go in and approve them. Say, okay, yes, I approve of these particular judges. My letter can go to him once I actually write it. So I've got to update my approved judges, and then the dates got added on there, the date of when I actually approved it. And then he can go back and change his mind after the fact if the letter has not already been approved. Once the letter gets approved, then it's kind of a done deal. The Career Services Office can print it off or email whatever they're doing with it. And then that's just pretty much it. Okay, so let me switch back to Internet Explorer here. Okay, so the other, like the joint journal competition, there's kind of a management piece for this whole thing. Wherever it went to. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. Okay, and this is there's a whole lot of stuff to this. So the judges, just to skip around real quick, hit the highlights. There's all the judges that have been put in there, and we've got how many? I don't even want to know. 5,144. That and these are not all active. These are the ones that have been put in over the last, I guess, year and a half, not quite. That we downloaded from leadership directories. But if I actually go in and do a different search, there should be a lot fewer LDI feed that are active. 4,703. So roughly 400 judges out of that list were either ones that we had to add manually, or for ones who retired or did something else who are no longer active.
Died.
Or died from leadership directories. So there they all are. And then I can there's a button at the bottom here where I can go in and mass update them. This is where I go in, take my Excel spreadsheet, upload it, making sure that all the columns match correctly, and then it sticks it into my database.
Are you going to walk through the letter piece of it?
Let's do that.
Because that, the composition of the letter that the recommender letter was one of the big logistical nightmares for our faculty support center and the faculty themselves, because they would basically write a letter in Word or WordPerfect and send it on to faculty support services. They would have to muck with the formatting sometimes, and it was just sort of a laborious process, and then sometimes career services would get left out of the loop, and they just faced a lot of challenges. So we wanted this system to, in addition to all the other functionality that Gary has already shown, they needed for the faculty members to be able to go on My Carolina Law and upload their document if they've written it outside of our interface, or actually write it within the interface. Is that correct?
They could do that too.
They could do that too. But generally, they're still going to upload a Word or WordPerfect letter of recommendation, but now they're sending it into our system rather than sending it on to an administrative support person who has to mess around with it. And this was I think, one of the coolest features, and it generates PDF output and gets formatted nicely and all the rest. So.
Okay. So application management, that's basically what you saw in the joint journal competition. It's the same type deal. There's some dates. That's not that exciting. What this also allows us to do is that if a lot of times students, of course, miss deadlines. We know how students are. And so our career services office can go in and add information as far as adding judges for them, add recommenders for them. I'm going to do that here, and there's a method to my madness that you'll see in a second. Where am I? There I am. So I'm going to add a different recommender here for somebody else. Yeah, let's add the dean just for the fun of it.
You said outside recommender?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
okay. So I've added a different recommender here. So the other stuff, similar interface to the joint journal competition. I don't need to do that one. Let's go to the letters because that's the fun part. So I'm going to go into here for 2011, 2012, and I'm going to do the students.
And you're now the faculty member, right?
No, I'm the career services office at this point. So I'm the career services office. I've gotten the letter from the faculty member, and that's not going to quite work. And then I want to put the letter in because the faculty member is not going to put the letters in. They're just not going to do it. So I'm getting the letter from the dean from me. Judge selections haven't been approved. I just added the judge, but the faculty member never went in and actually approved it. So for those faculty members who are, tech phobia, who have phobias with technology and all that kind of stuff, the career service office can go in and say, that's not what I wanted. What am I doing? I want that. Okay, Mr. Old faculty member, that's not nice. Mr. non-tech savvy faculty member who doesn't want to go in and do this, let's go in and I will approve your judges for you. So
can you comment on how many times career services had to do that, or were faculty? This was the first year we did it. Was last year.
I think for the most part, most of the faculty went in and approved did everything themselves online. Because I think that was pretty much pushed by the faculty member who's the head of the whole judicial clerkship process. Yeah, I don't think the career services office had to go in and do this much. They just needed the ability to do it if they had to. So I'm going to update my judges. Now I can go back in and put my letter in for them since now the dean has approved my judges. So
you did say that Dean Boger sent the letter to career services instead of uploading it himself?
The faculty, they don't have the ability to do that.
Oh, they don't.
No,
I was wrong. I'm sorry.
The faculty don't actually put their letters in themselves, and that's mainly to ensure that, well, mainly because they're probably not going to do it anyway, but mainly also to make sure that the formatting comes out correctly.
Okay, so there is still an intermediate step before it gets put
Right.
into the system. Okay.
So here I'm entering the letter for this particular student by this particular faculty member for these particular judges. I need some letter content. I've got this little option to paste from Word where I can take my Word document, copy and paste it into this particular box. I have no idea what's on the clipboard. What's on the clipboard? Nothing. Okay. If I had a Word document, I could paste it in there and it would be done, or I can just come in here and type. Okay, and now let's say I need a signature. I do have the option, where did it go, to insert this particular faculty member's signature, and there it is. And that's one of those magical things that's behind the scenes that everybody really likes, that looks at the recommender in there and then goes out on the file system to see if there's a file that actually matches the particular recommender, and then it just sticks it in there.
We've pretty much got every faculty member's electronic signature, which is kind of scary, but we don't abuse the privilege.
If I were doing this for a different recommender and I try to, oh, that's not good, I can't do Big Bird. Let's do Doug here. Okay, there's Doug. And let's delete the signature out of there, delete, and I try to put his signature in. He's just a brand new faculty member, and I don't have it, so I can't do that with this particular one. So let's put that back in and put my signature back in.
It seems kind of geeky to everybody here, but I can't tell you how excited Career Services was to get that functionality where you just hit a button to insert the faculty member signature into the electronic copy of the document, because it just makes things a lot easier.
So now I can preview the letter content to see what it looks like and see how this will actually work on this machine. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Oh, I don't have Acrobat Reader installed on this. Okay. It would pull up a PDF with the actual letter content on there. So now I can save my letter once I've selected all my judges. And there's the letter for it. And it's actually there, and now I can go back in and do something else. And the only other stuff that's on here is basically kind of your standard stuff for logistical things. You can view your letters so that you can copy into Oscar. So it takes the letters that you've entered and creates either a PDF or just an HTML file version that you can copy into Oscar for those judges who are on Oscar. You can print the letters and the envelopes to go with them in the appropriate size. It generates a PDF with both of those in there. And you pick and choose the pages from there for actual printing purposes. You can check to see which faculty members have said that they're going to be a recommender for a particular student who have not sent you the letters yet. That should probably work for, there we go, same thing. It should just be one big list. There we go. So Doug has not given me yet the letters for me for these particular judges. And what this also allows them to do is to pick and choose which judges they want to send letters to. If a faculty member is old friends with a judge, they can use a customized letter for that one particular judge if they wanted to go that route. So that's why we have to specify the judges that have not had letters submitted for. And then I can actually send an email to the recommenders who I don't want to do that because that's actually going to email them out, who have not actually submitted their letters as of yet, just to remind them that you need to go and do this. And we have 2 different notices programmed in that have different language depending on who hasn't submitted what they need to submit. And I think that's basically quick and dirty high-level version of it. Does anybody have any questions? It's a very quiet room.
This seems a little overwhelming when you look at all the different pieces of it, and it was to me as we discussed it with Career Services, and we had it scoped to the point where we thought we were ready to roll on the programming, and then another meeting was called where a couple people from Career Services office, a couple of the career counselors were in the room that hadn't been in the room prior to that as part of the discussion, and oh, but that's not how we do it, or yeah, but what about the fact that some students do the end run and then add another judge later, and you're going to have to prevent that from happening. So it started to turn into what I'm sure a lot of you know as feature creep, and I was starting to get concerned that there were going to be so many steps involved in this that it was going to fall flat and it was going to kind of blow up in our face. But I was relieved after last year's run that we talked to the director of the clerkship program, the faculty member who runs it, and talked to the dean of career services, and it was pretty well received. I mean, it was probably one of the more complex
It's pretty complex, just
there's a
because
lot of pieces to it.
there's so many steps to actually go through with all of the parts of it, all the stuff that the faculty have to actually do, and the Career Services Office actually has to do to get all of these letters generated and approved and sent out.
Yeah. So, but it was a good example of us working with multiple departments. Our faculty administrative support that provide administrative support directly to all the faculty, obviously, and career services, and then the faculty member herself, Melissa Saunders, who runs it. And I thought we won a lot of friends, and in the process of sort of developing this app. And the process before this was much more manual, much more fragmented, much more broken in a lot of ways. And there were a couple times during the discussions when I had to step in, and this is where my leadership role, and I'm not a programmer like Gary, but I can say, that's a people process. That's not something that technology is going to be able to fix. Or, yeah, we can put in some safeguards to make sure that the student doesn't add a judge later that wasn't on the original list. So some things we could accomplish, and some things are just process issues that came up in the last session in here about IT support in general, that you can throw as much technology at some problems as you want, but it's not going to solve the people and the human process issues. But I think this was a really good example of an application that we designed from the ground up that solved a very particular problem for a group of people in the school. And
Sure.
Have they come back with other, tweaks or feature requests to change it, or is it pretty stable at this point?
Not with this. We actually did our career services did actually send out an email to both the faculty and to the students, and the only thing that the students kind of wanted to do was what I alluded to earlier, was being able to select multiple judges all at the same time rather than having to go in and pick them pick one after the other. And if it wasn't for that Oscar question, there's no reason we couldn't do the pick one at a time. But to try to pick multiple judges, especially with and it's not just the Oscar question, it's the search part of it, especially if you're trying to perform multiple searches, or if you're trying to search all 5,000 judges at the same time. It's just too much load to put out there to pick, let's pick my 50 judges from this big list of 5,000 and then say Oscar, Oscar, not Oscar, etc. That was just really more than we thought was feasible. So, but that's really the only feedback that we got that anybody said anything about.
I went repeatedly, starting in January of this year, at my administrative team meeting, which is all the assistant deans and associate deans, and even directly, just in hallway conversations, I kept going back and saying, let's get ahead of JCAP 2.0. Let's make whatever modifications we need so we get out ahead of it. And Brian said, oh yeah, we're gonna poll the faculty, and they said, yeah, we're gonna poll the students. And I kept looking for more significant kinds of feedback, because I thought there would be some constructive criticism, but I was kind of disappointed in a way that the students didn't give us more other than what Gary just mentioned, and that faculty themselves, who, some of them groused about it a little bit, like, oh, I was confused at this, that, or the other. I thought, well, we're here to help, we can modify it based on your needs, but if you don't get feedback, you don't want to make changes to it. So,
anybody else have any questions, comments?
Impressive app. It's the kind of thing we all deal with. Every law school, at least every attorney law school, I think goes through this, and we're all under pressure to increase the number of students that we place in clerkship. So, very impressive.
Thanks, man. We talked to Elmer in just sort of a coffee conversation or a drink conversation in the opening reception about how we've joked about going to the Office of Technology Development at Carolina to try to turn this into a sort of a profitable venture, but it's so particular to law schools, for one, and there's so much problem when you've got a staff person like Gary. It's work for hire. He can't spin it into he can't monetize it. I mean, it's like the university might be able to sell it, but interestingly, John Mayer's response to that was, hey, let's talk. Maybe CALI could buy this thing and then offer it to other law schools. So stay tuned for that. There may be some porting of code that could happen, and obviously we'd have to talk to your back end, but a lot of it, like Gary said, could be ported to other systems, but it's dependent on having a lot of this information.
And that's part of the reason why I went over a lot of the background at the beginning, just because there's all the tie-ins to our existing internal website and all of the stuff with our individual, we've got a table of people and they all have an ID number and all of that stuff ties into this particular thing. So to try to rip this out and make it as a standalone product isn't really workable in its current iteration.
Yeah.
So, but it's not necessarily, I mean, anybody can write code who knows what they're doing. It's more of the matter of coming up with the concept, and these are the steps that you can actually take to do all of this stuff online. Anybody could have written the back end for this.